Army of Two is a series I've typically regarded about as fondly as one might a decaying plant. Despite having top-tier soil, optimal sunlight, and a roof over its head, the plant just withered and died. Obviously, appearances can be deceiving. The soil might have had some infectious insect, the sunlight could have been a bit too harsh, the roof might have been threatening to collapse at any minute, but then, when you least expect it, suddenly the plant's growing back. It has a new chance at life. It's starting to blossom into something genuinely compelling, and oh look, the roof did collapse in on it before it had a chance. That figures. Also, if you like what I do and want to help me defy the algorithm to make this channel reality, feel free to subscribe and toss a coin to your YouTuber on Patreon. On with the video. Across the first two games, Army of Two's relative lighthearted silliness was always tangled up in barbed wire cynicism. The opening level of the entire series is about how Salem and Rios just hate their job in the army because of how cool the most annoying pocket sand throwing mercenary looks to them. Then in the 40th day, EA Montreal tried to flip the script like a panther on a murder spree against terrorists, brutally beating players over the head with some of the strangest moral choices possible, including a finale where you either shot your partner or risked a far worse consequence to be loyal to your bud. Maybe. Because you see, canonically, one of the titular two is shot, specifically Salem, the Weasley one who looks like he can recognize pepper spray brands by flavor. So of course, as explained in their Game Informer cover story, the unexpected third entry that we're delving into today decided to triple down on the nihilism. Seriously, if you thought, man, imagine if someone made a co-op shooter in the vein of Michael Bay's Pain and Gain by way of From Dusk Till Dawn, then have I got the action game specifically built for you, friend. The Devil's Cartel isn't just a depressing tale of greed and vengeance, but a full circle critique of the journey Salem and Rio started on at the start of the Xbox 360's life cycle, fittingly, at the end of the 360's life cycle. It's not perfect, sure, there's buggy behavior, cut features, and it certainly won't fill you with warm fuzzies afterwards, but it does actually stick the landing this time. Salem and Rios have done well for themselves despite Alice's death in the 40th day terrorist attack. Trans World Operations isn't just two men, but a veritable army of mask-wearing, machismo-spewing badasses. At least I'm sure that's what they would like me to describe them as. Except it seems neither of the original duo bothered to teach their newest how to dodge an RPG, let alone an RPG in a crashing carrier transport. I guess that just never came up for the rest of the crew. The only two competent enough to not be defeated by an RPG are the duo Alpha and Bravo, and yes, their names are incredibly generic. And so are their personalities. Alpha is clearly ex-law enforcement with the inability to heal a single injury on his face for 4 years. Oops. While Bravo is his Hispanic partner here to calm any concerns about racism as you brutally murder over 1,000 Mexicans during this jaunt through narco shenanigans. Also Fiona, but we'll get to her in a minute. While Salem and Rios are about as charismatic as your drunk uncle trying to talk to you about how the wokes are ruining games, Alpha and Bravo are about as spicy as literal salt. Alpha is so straight-laced that I'm amazed his actor gets anything out of the script. Seriously, you can't believe that this is the same guy who played Constantine in Rise of the Tomb Raider. It is amazing what he was able to eke out of this and just how much more potential he had not being tapped into. Meanwhile, Bravo is so cartoonishly devil-may-care that it feels more like puppy dog energy than genuinely intimidating. Like,
they see us, we'll have an army on our asses.
Don't worry, we can be stealthy.
Yeah, I can tell by your loud weapons and iconic names.
She has a point.
Okay, we breach on 3. 1, 2.
Fuck that! You felt that tremor, right?
We don't know what's on the other side of this door. Wait. Shit! Watch out!
I know it's not gonna be on there.
No shit. All right, let's find another way.
the irony is this actually kind of works, as neither of these buffoons really gets in the way of the actual narrative, which has very little to do with them and everything to do with the fallout of the 40th day's canonical conclusion. I'm going to spoil the most obvious twist in gaming in 3, 2, 1. So Salem is already sore about what happened during the 40th day, only for Rios to once again choose a civilian life, in this case Fiona's, over a quick buck, and Salem's awfully tired of that. He tries to bolt on his own, gets partially burnt in a car crash he somehow survives despite being trapped in what could be generously described as Jigsaw's Easy Bake Oven. He becomes the major domo for Bautista, a drug lord in Mexico who has it out for an upstart politician trying to clean up the streets. And because Salem knows every trick in their book, he slowly dismantles all the operatives deployed, except for Big Boy and Bob, who are just here for some reason. They have other names, but let's be real here, it's Big Boy and Bob. What ensues is one of the most viscerally violent games of 2013. Due to being built on the Frostbite 2 engine, the Devil's Cartel has some of the most destructive explosions around, paired with the kind of gore you typically only see in Dead Space. This game makes some of Syndicate 2012's battles look tame, and that's a game where you can make someone unalive themselves by holding down a button or blow their head off of a sniper rifle. Also like Syndicate, Devil's Cartel is actually exceptionally good action. Not great shooting, mind you. The aim sensitivity is very odd and downright janky during sniping, yet for 99% of the game, it's not actually an issue, especially thanks to all the snap to aim implementation and Bravo covering you as an AI companion who will take orders, plus the vast volume of bullets that you can just pour out of these guns, like they're literally sweating bullets. Precision is just the last thing you'll be worried about, believe me. And to really hammer home how much they just want you to just barely ever stop shooting except to occasionally reload, Devil's Cartel tosses most of the stiffer set pieces from the previous games for a new mechanic, Overkill, which verges on making shooting a gun in an empty room almost as fun as pumping into some fool who thought he should bring a machete to a grenade launcher fight. And that's before we even get into the Bulletstorm style scoring system that encourages you to try to rack up kills as quickly as possible. Overkill is, on paper, just another generic rage mode that temporarily gives you unlimited ammo and invincibility, except both you and your partner, whether AI or human, can use it at any time, and it absolutely demolishes everything in sight. Not just the enemies, the entire world is obliterated. Plus, due to how brief it is, you have to use it tactfully. Yet it also recharges fast enough to encourage you to channel your inner Michael Bay, pushing on enemies brazenly like you're in a Bad Boys sequel. And this is backed with an ironically far more highbrow orchestral score leaning on delicate string instruments and horns. Truly, this is some of the best presentation work by EA Montreal, which makes the jarringly rough aspects all the more disappointing. Every 15 minutes or so, there's this pause menu that rips you out of the moment for you to restock on ammo and potentially tweak your loadout. While this can be useful, it really gets in the way early on when you can't afford anything useful anyway. Just ignore it for like the first 3 hours, hitting the back or select button depending on which console you're playing it on, and you'll be better off. This is the sort of thing I'd expect from like a mobile game, you know, Modern Combat or something like that. Not a major AAA release, especially one in 2013. It's not even like there's microtransactions or anything, it's just kinda jarringly there. It's as disruptive to the flow of gameplay as it is bringing it up in the middle of discussing how absolutely bananas the action is. Despite this, and the nihilism, and the narrative that is trying to have some Sergio Leone vibes but without any of the tact, nails damn near every section? There is very good variety to the level design, objectives, and ways to approach each encounter regardless of linearity, paired with a rock-solid arsenal of modern firearms that you can upgrade into absolute founts of destruction. Whether it's riding in a helicopter, using a broken car for cover, being forced to rely on pistols while sneaking around, avoiding setting off a meth lab with your bullets, or having Fiona as a third teammate who also benefits from overkill, it just all leaves me very confused that one of the criticisms levied at Devil's Cartel at launch was it lacking ambition. Really? This lacks ambition. How? This is easily one of the best paced third-person shooters I've ever played. This is a case of craftsmanship standing out over the core product itself. Nothing here immediately feels new, yet I can't name another game of this kind, especially a dedicated co-op experience that offers this much satisfying action all strung together smoothly. It says more about the cynicism of critics tiring of 7th Gen's emphasis on bombast than the game itself that it was so roughly received. I can honestly say, as someone who found the first 2 entries to be ridiculous misfires, Devil's Cartel is where it all finally starts to click. I mean, yes, you sacrifice seeing your allies' perspective, and the aggro system isn't shoved in your face, but is instead an understated element, and Bravo's abilities are more situational to each set piece, but in truth, the only aspect I found to be disappointing in its absence was having more direct control over my AI partner. I mean, they were interesting ideas, but they never really brought much to the table, and would have been more fitting in a genuinely cartoonish game, not something that was supposed to be gritty and set in the real world, or at least the real world as Michael Bay perceives it. And I know I'm making a lot of Michael Bay comparisons, but seriously, this game is just lathered in that. It even has the orange tint at sunset, constant presence and vibe to it. When it's at night, it looks like you're in Transformers 2007. You expect Optimus to pop out of the junkyard. And though Bravo's tactical commands are often situational, he's actually effective at any role you put him in. I'm astonished to say this, but this is probably the closest an AI partner has come to feeling like Delta Squad from Republic Commando. He'll kill anyone endangering him, revive players when it's safe to do so, and sometimes even intuits when to trigger overkill in a fight to keep himself or you from being downed. He can even say no when it's a bad idea to toss a grenade, and typically is correct. It would actually cause damage to you as well. Like, this is really competent scripting. His characterization might just be a middle-aged mercenary looking to retire to his fishing boat, but his combat barks and utility are remarkably in sync with your own. This is good design, which is especially impressive given there are several set pieces that split both of you off, and either partner not holding up their end of the bargain means a game over. Just as impressive are those guns that I mentioned. Now, I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty of late, and let me just say, I am so grateful for how few there are in this game. You're looking at around 5 to 8 options per weapon class, and as a result, each feels distinct in its role. There's not a sea of options where it's just minute metrics. As I said, sniping is a bit painful, so don't really try to lean on those, but everything else is outstanding. Pistols that kick like a mule, SMGs that are perfect for fast flanking, shotguns you can upgrade to set enemies ablaze, and rifles of the semi, automatic, and machine gun variety. Sure, by the end it's quite possible to craft a near perfect gun for your needs, but by that point you've earned it and the scenarios have escalated to match. You'll have survived hundreds of enemies, gone through all manner of chaos, and a little ridiculous clip size is frankly warranted. Some of the most ridiculous weapons cosmetic options are now absent, but in their place is one of the best progression curves I've experienced in years. You are always precisely as powerful as the campaign expects you to be, which can't have been easy given the sheer glut of potential playstyles you can opt for. They might all be shooty bang bang, but whether you're recklessly pushing, hanging back and flanking, or like to flush enemies out with use of grenades like yours truly, there's an angle you can take. I also appreciate just how utterly destructible everything is. That really can't be overstated. While the endgame news broadcast claims that the local city is feeling hope now that the cartel is defeated, I have to wonder if any civilians are willing to live in a town that's got all these pyrotechnic-sized holes in every available building. This is some next level destructibility. I don't know how 7th gen systems were not cooking like they were ready to explode while playing this game in single player, let alone in split screen co-op, but I barely even heard my 360's fan kick on that much. The system simply shouldn't be able to handle this, and it's a damn shame it can't be upscaled on more recent consoles. Seriously, how is only the first Army of Two playable on Series X, EA? It can't be that much of a hurdle to bring the latter two games over. If it's because of the rapper cameos, just cut them from the game. I promise nobody but their record producers will notice. Speaking of characters you might not notice, Fiona is sadly the biggest missed opportunity here. She's decent on paper. You rescue her from being trafficked by the cartel, and then she becomes a badass revolutionary in Mexico, fighting cartels practically on her own. And if you squint really hard, you'll miss that she's an obvious texture swap for Ellie's model from Dead Space 3. Look, I'm all for clever asset recycling, it's something that we should do more often, but she has the same haircut and t-shirt. It's not exactly subtle. What's more disappointing, spoiler warning 2 in 3, 2, 1, is they also recycle narrative beats from the 40th day, namely killing off the only female character so the male characters can get mad enough to defeat the big bad. Though at least in Fiona's case, she does get to kill the man who ruined her life, so she only gets fridged after completing her life's mission, so that's something, I guess? What isn't something is the final boss, a part of the game I'm pretty sure they slapped together in the last few months at best because there's no bid boss stage checkpoints. Bravo's AI competence takes a nosedive so much that he's guaranteed to die if you don't take down Salem's truck fast enough, and yeah, the grand finale of your epic raid through an entire compound is wave defense, then fighting an armored truck on foot. Sure. And understand, there are more exciting set pieces just for getting from point A to point B, but our last fight feels like aspects of a cut horde mode. Quick aside, what was with visceral associated games and not having horde modes that would be obvious and super fun to have? This game is begging for it, yet the only DLC it ever received was the pre-order exclusive Overkill's contracts bonus missions that can be finished in less than an hour and don't even net achievements. If that can be stapled together, surely a horde mode could have been explored in Dead Space or Army of Two. Be that as it may, even if the ending isn't all that satisfying, nor is the sequel tease post-credit scene likely to ever be followed up on, to call The Devil's Cartel a bad game just because of its bitter tone and lower budget blemishes is like saying Dog Soldiers is a bad horror movie because there's no overwrought romantic subplot or that the werewolves were CGI enough. You're missing the forest for the trees. This isn't trying to be some prestige piece of Oscar bait art, and it doesn't need to be. The Devil's Cartel uses 8 hours of mindless thrilling action to grant you catharsis that life likely keeps out of arm's reach far too often in your daily life. That's a hell of a lot more useful than, say, wasting 30 hours of time across 7 years of development for much higher budget to say, did you know that murder is bad? Army of Two will never be high art, but with the Devil's Cartel, it's at least achieved a damn good slice of action for those few that played it. And if all that sounds worthwhile to you, it's pretty darn cheap these days. I highly recommend it. Finally, as a quick note to longtime viewers, I really appreciate you sticking around despite YouTube's algorithm doing just about everything in its power to suppress my latest videos from being viewed. I'm not saying that speculatively either. I've looked over the analytics, and unless it's a video from the mid-2010s, this site is actively trying to smother me. For a while, I was contemplating what to do. Paired with burnout, it's been hard to muster the strength to do anything other than my collaborative videos with the Hidden Object Guru, which, to be clear, definitely check out. He and I have had a blast making those, and it really helped restore my creative energies. That said, at long last, I'm finally feeling some energy to make some new videos, as this clearly evidences. However, I'm not forcing any particular pace, since no posting rate satisfies Google's arcane abomination. Instead, I'm going back to posting as I feel something is ready, and on this channel, I'm only tackling things without a deadline. For my modern reviews, I've got gigs at Upload VR, GameCritics.com, a new one I can't announce yet, and collaborative coverage with Hoguru. This channel is going back to talking about weird shit that time forgot, whether it's obscure Star Wars games or misunderstood gems like The Devil's Cartel. Judging by what videos are still getting views these days, despite how hard this site tries to keep me from getting them, that's precisely what y'all are looking for, and if you made it this far in the video, then you get what I'm going for. As such, welcome aboard. And if you can, share the channel with your mates. Grassroots word of mouth is about the only hope I've got left for escaping the algorithm prison, and until then, let's go back to having some fun, yeah? See you next time.